I am, as they say, Todd Madison. I'm the Director of Research for Transparent California. Yes, thank you. I think the world's largest database of public employee compensation. We have close to 40 million records now. We add millions every year. So my part in that is I'm in charge of that collection. So, and particularly because I have a place in my heart for K-12, I actually personally collect all the K-12 information. So we make thousands of public record requests every year. Okay. So let's talk for a minute about school budgets. Where can we find the money we need to educate our kids? How do you get your employee, the superintendent, to use that money to improve the education of kids the way that you want? You were elected by parents. You reflect their wishes. You need to make sure your superintendent understands that. But first, we need some facts to address the myths, a couple of myths. I'm going to violate Melinda's rule, and I'm going to talk about facts here for a minute. Sorry. One myth is that the education system always gets shortchanged on funding. You'll hear that over and over again. You're all into this more than most. I'm sure you know the state allocates huge resources to K-12 education, $129.2 billion this year. I don't know about you, that's a pretty big number to me. I wouldn't mind opening up my bank account and finding that someday. The single largest expense in the state budget, 33% of all of our general fund goes into K-12 education. Again, huge. Since 2012, per student spending has risen from $9,600 to over $22,000 per year, per student per year. You can see there what the graph is, which direction the graph is going. It's not going down. That's an increase rate. So you can say, okay, well, inflation is huge. That's an increase rate of over 7.5% per year. That's almost 3 times the rate of inflation. So when they tell you that education funding has not been going up, no, education funding has been going up at a rate greatly exceeding inflation. So if your super or your district administration tells you the reason they can't accomplish something that the board wants, challenge them on that. Check your own funding for your own school and ask them, okay, why is it you can't do what we want you to do? So spending goes up, academic performance, not so much. Academic performance goes down. I'm sure you all know 2023 SBACs, 47% of our kids proficient in English, 35% in math. All the schools I went to when I was a kid would call that an F in both cases. Of course, that's on a, what did they call it? It's not a norm basis. It's
criterion.
Yeah. So we learned that. So where does that money go? In 2022, 87% of unrestricted spending went to labor, pay and benefits for employees. So that's kind of normal. It's a service business. You expect to spend most of your money on labor. But if you're going to have any significant impact on spending priorities, that's where you need to look, because that's where the money is going. Everything else is just rummaging around in the couch looking for change. So to see where that's going, we can look at the data. That's what we do, data. We collect actual compensation data. This is not averages. This is not self-reported. This is actually from your district's payroll records. We make those requests. We ask for the data from their payroll records. We assume, because it's a legal request, that they're responding with accurate information. We occasionally have to sue people. So we know that the data, despite the protestations you'll hear out there about Transparent California is not accurate, it is actual data provided by your district in response to a legal request. So it's data that gets reported to the IRS every year. As a matter of fact, people can go to jail if they don't report that data correctly. Second myth that we hear is that our education employees are hideously underpaid, pretty much always on the verge of having to eat cat food for dinner. So this is the graph from that data of median total compensation over the last decade. That doesn't look like a graph that's going down. So last year in 2022, median total compensation of an administrator was $183,000 a year. And as Sandra kind of alluded to, the median total compensation of a full-time certificated employee was $134,000 a year. So when you ask your average parent who's up at the board expressing sympathy for those poor underpaid teachers, I ask them, I grab them when they come down from the podium and say, how much do you think teachers make? They always say $40,000. They've been kind of indoctrinated that the starting wage actually represents what they make. In reality, of course, it's nowhere near that. Note the steeper climb from 2021 to 22. We've got a little bump up there. That's COVID funding. That is learning loss mitigation funding, which many districts use to give themselves bonuses in pay and benefits. Not obviously to correct learning loss. So we see that, and we've seen many demands by labor groups to give them more money because you have it. I don't know of any business I've ever been involved in where I can go to the boss and say, I want a raise because you've got the money. It doesn't actually work that way. Not because we've improved education. Again, same graph, pay goes up, academic performance goes down. So what can a school board do on this? Your only employee is the superintendent. That's your job, is to monitor the superintendent. You can't go to the CBO and say, I would like you to spend money this way. The only thing you can do is go to the superintendent. But that's kind of a good thing. Like any executive management, you can't do everything. You've got to have somebody in charge who can manage day-to-day operations and get it to happen. Melanie talked to us earlier about the power of persuasion. That was a great talk. And that's important to get board members on your side. Obviously, you need board members on your side. But in general, once the board has made a decision, you don't need persuasion for your superintendent. I mean, having been in management, I can tell you it's always nice to have the people below you agree with your goals and your tasks and what you want to have done. It makes things a lot easier. But every once in a while, you got to say, I'm the boss. This is how it gets done. Mm-hmm. So when you're going to the superintendent, it would be nice to have them on your side. But at some point, you got to say, hey, we're the boss. We need it done. So now, of course, you can fire the superintendent. We have members here who have fired their superintendent. It's a major thing, though. It's a momentous action. And it's not something the way it works in private industry. In private industry, you don't say either you get this, and this done, or we fire you. And then, you basically put some incentive in it. That's what I'm here to talk to today, actually. Usually, you make use of normal human nature. Human nature means, we want to make more money, right? So what they do in private industry is you put together an incentive program, a bonus program. In schools, median total compensation of a superintendent in 2022 was $280,000 a year. In private industry, you don't have any employees who make $280,000 a year who don't have a percentage of their income based on performance. That's just how it works. I mean, if we're talking about making Oreos, we're the superintendent or the CEO of that company is going to have some percentage based on driving some goal that his board thinks is important. I call it carrot-based rather than stick-based. You can always just beat somebody about the head and body and try and get them to do something. But if you hang a carrot in front of them, we all know that kids will respond to a promise of ice cream probably a little better than they'll respond to the threat of a belt. The ice cream seems to work just a little bit better than that. It also, if the person doesn't get their bonus, it provides a pretty clear signal that they're not meeting your goals. They're not doing what you want them to do. So put some personal skin into the game. Give the board a way to track progress objectively. Set some goals and see what happens, rather than going straight to you're fired as an option. So suppose you gave your super a contract that pays a good base rate, more than anybody else in the district, but added bonuses for meeting budget or performance goals. Goal for financials might be bring the budget in without deficit spending. You're doing okay in English but poorly in math. A goal might be improve English a little bit, but we really need some improvement in math. I'd recommend goals based on objective measures. I know that the SBACs and the CASP is not an ideal measurement, but it is what the state uses. That is what the state looks at your district and says, here's how we're doing. So those are good goals to start with. Plus, they're harder to gain to some degree. You can look at similar districts. You can go, okay, well, there's another district out there that has the same number of kids, same mix of low-income kids, English learners, blah, blah, blah. They've managed to do what we want and set that. So the board is in charge of the goals. You set them. If the superintendent meets the goals, he makes a little bit more money. What is there not to like about that? The super wins if he meets your goals. He's Mr. Moneybags here is going to take home a little bit more money. If you've structured this properly, they probably aren't going to take home a lot more than they would make just for warming the seat, the current plan. Mm-hmm. But it's a win. It's a win for them. If they blow your goal away and you've structured the program, who cares? If the superintendent makes $290,000 this year instead of $280,000, I mean, if he brings your budget in the black and he increases your math performance by 5%, that's what we want. Parents win because, of course, they get a better education for their kids. You win because you're a representative of those parents. They're going to love you, for doing that. Most importantly, kids win. That's what we're here for. Kids get a better education out of it because their superintendent cares about it. That superintendent is going to go sit in rooms and ask the English teacher, what can I do to support you? So not only are the kids going to win, but the teachers are going to win because the superintendent is going to want to find out how they can support teachers to educate kids better. Joe Biden has a quote. I don't quote Joe Biden too often, but I can tell you, Joe Biden says, don't tell me what you value, show me your budget and I'll tell you what you value. That's pretty powerful. I mean, if you just look at your budget, you can tell what your school district values. Do they value their own pocketbook or do they value the education of your kids?
Right, twice a day.
Did he?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay, well,
Can't find the stairs,
that's all right.
But he's right
It's a
about
good
that.
quote anyway. So we need to make sure that our superintendent is in line with us. I would suggest doing something so that you don't have to babysit the superintendent. Put a carrot out there, make them run for it, make them pay attention to get their pay. So with that, I thank you very much.